It's supposedly the end of the world right now, but it's not. Again, they will always want you to think it's the end of the world. They mean the end of the world for you, the end of the world for you controlling your own destiny or believing you can affect the world around you. The social engineers want you to sit down and just implode. I want to take some of these calls that are holding for David Icke. But David, you said you have a quote for us.
Yeah, just one thing I quickly wanted to say, Alex. When I was just before the break, I was talking about, you know, the spiritual, so-called spiritual stuff, or don't talk about the negative conspiracy. That's an imbalance. But if we talk about only the 5 sense level of the conspiracy and not the deeper levels of the nature of reality from which that 5 sense level can be understood from a much greater understanding, that's an imbalance as well. Now, this is a quote by George Carlin, the great George Carlin, who said this: "Did you ever stop to think about all the people we kill? They're always the people who tell us to live together in harmony and try to love one another. Gandhi, Lincoln, Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, John Lennon. They all said, try to live together peacefully. Bam, right in the head. Apparently, we're not ready for that. Well, we are ready for that, George. It's that which is manipulating society doesn't want us to be ready for that, because that means that the life force on which they feed is removed. And that's why the massively at the heart of this revolution is to start to love each other and care for each other. Not in a, oh, I love you, and you know, that stuff, and that kind of version of love, but a true love, which is, you know, more the love that you see in friendship, unconditional love, and love in its true sense stands and will not move and will not budge, because love in its true sense will always do what it knows to be right, with consequences not even considered, because anything that could be considered not doing what you know to be right is simply not in the psyche of love in its true sense. This is the power that will bring this down. Well, David, then there's the counterfeit of Obama running drone attacks everywhere, and then he says the answer is love. There's also always the counterfeit as well, where they say, be loving, turn your guns into us, we come in peace. Oh, Alex, I mean, I don't know how long we've got here, but I mean, I could talk about this. You've talked twice here about counterfeiting, and you've talked about deceit, right? Well, you know, there is an area of research that I've been pulling together for some time, and that is common themes. I always find it very compelling when I see very different peoples and very different sources coming to the same conclusions and talking about the same things. And there is a force which is described in precisely the same way by ancient Gnostics, they call them the Archons, by the pre-Islamic Arabians, and Islam picked it up, the jinn. They call them in Central America the flyers. The Christians call them the demons, and so on and so forth. And when you look at what he said about these, let's look at what the Gnostic writings from 2,000 years ago say about these Archons, that they are they're energetic beings, but with a mentality that's robot-like and what we would call computer-like. They do not have the ability for what the Gnostics called intentionality, what I will translate as creative imagination. It's like try to get a computer to create something. You can't. You have to put in the information to create through it. It can't do it scratch. And so we humans have creative imagination. Thus, to create the world that they want, which is this Orwellian nightmare, and then some, they have to get us to use our creative imagination to create it.
Saying we're just going to make you turn all your guns in and we'll give you money for them. That's Cuomo in New York. I mean, these people are really making their move. And again, they don't need to really convince everybody to turn their guns in. They need to convince us that other people were convinced, so it's somehow okay in a democracy instead of a republic. Now, David's going to stay with us 20 more minutes so we can take your calls, and I appreciate that. He wants to finish the point he was just getting at when I mentioned the term counterfeit. Continue.
Yeah. So I'll use the instance of this force that these Gnostic writings from 2,000 years ago called the Archons. But in saying that, this is what is said by these others too. So we have a real common theme here across different religions and different cultures and different times. And let's look at what they say about the Archons. First of all, they can be described, the Gnostics said, in one word: deceivers. Their method of manipulation is deception. They are mind parasites, and they parasite off human energy, and they parasite off the human mind and manipulate the human mind. This is the Christian, perception of possession, which is true. These things exist. These energetic fields, energetic entities, they lock into people at the electromagnetic field level, and then start dictating through that the perceptions and the behavior of the possessed person. They talk about the Gnostics that the Archons are able to create something that they call HAL, H-A-L, which translates as, wait for it, virtual realities. They have the ability to make people see things that aren't actually there. How do they do that? By manipulating the way that people construct reality in the few cubic centimeters at the back of the brain. That's how. And this is the other thing that has been mentioned already today. And another thing on the real top list of what the Archons do and how they do it is they invert everything. They turn everything on its head. So when Obama talks about love, he's talking about hate. You've got to turn everything they say upside down to see what they're saying. This is why Satanists, who in their rituals are worshipping and interacting with these archontic entities, invert everything. They invert the cross. They invert the pentagram.
They're turning women into men and men into non-entities. Everything is turned upside down.
Is why this is the force, and these hybrid bloodlines, which is why these families and elite families and bloodlines are so obsessed with bloodline, have a hybrid genetics, i.e. a hybrid energetic field, which is much closer to the energetic field of these archontic entities.
And by the way, whether that was true or not, all over their writings, as you know, David, even BBC articles, the elite believe they are a separate species. They say this.
A separate species because they have been specifically created on the body level to be energetically, vibrationally, frequency-wise, closely connected to these archontic entities that operate outside of human sight, so that the possession of these bloodlines is able to be far more powerful and total than it is of the general population, although it happens with the general population as well, as we know. So when you're looking at the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the British royal family and all these people, you are looking at these archontic entities incarnated in you.
It'd be like if I had a remote control robot, or when they send the Mars rover to Mars, it's being run from Houston.
No empathy, they have no conscience, and that they are running this whole society to bring about an end of total human control. And those vast majority of people, because there's, compared with 7 billion, these people, these bloodlines are so few.
Official government with quotes like, "It is time to have a war against your gun owners. It is time to take all the guns." The Russian media is saying do that. This new UN treaty. I mean, global government is out in the open. And then they have these weirdo, fake liberal, who are just really monstrous eugenicists talk show hosts come out and say, there's no world government. I mean, we've now reached a point where the government admits in the New York Times they run Al-Qaeda to make father's suicide bomb or they'll kill their family. And they say, isn't that good? And isn't it good the CIA is torturing people, including children? And then separately, we got to search you, though, because Al-Qaeda might be hiding in your pants at the airport. And then they're like, oh, yeah, the communist Chinese own our debt, and they say we've got to turn our guns in. I mean, it really is getting over the top now. And what is that where they announce world government in hundreds of newspapers, but then if you talk about it, the Southern Poverty Law Center and ADL say you must be a terrorist. I mean, what is this propaganda? This is propaganda I would design, David, to wake people up against me. But instead, it actually works on people.
Yeah, there's a few things in there. First of all, there's one thing telling people almost in a subconscious way that, yes, we want world government, because most people don't actually focus on the facts. They get an image of something. But there's another thing on alerting the conscious mind to it. And you see, when it's in newspapers and it's there and the mass of stuff and world government, oh yeah, whatever, what else is going on today? But when you focus it, as you know, people like we do and many others like us around the world, when you focus it and say, hey, look, here's the facts, they want world government, that's different, because that's talking directly to the conscious mind. It's alerting the conscious mind to it, and then people can start to see it and put the stuff together. But if it stays in the subconscious mind as some kind of just part of the maze of information that people receive all the time, then it could just pass them by.
David, I got to say this. You really are amazing, because there's really no one else I talk to that really gets it. That was my answer, and that's exactly what I know they're doing. They have a background noise of world government. Yeah, we're going to, sterilize you. Yeah, cancer, viruses, and the vaccine. Yeah, they gave 60-something thousand kids polio in India, Bill Gates Foundation. But it's just kind of buried like it's no big deal. They put this incredible stuff in there like it's not a problem. Yeah, the CIA tortures kids in front of their parents. It's to fight the terrorists. Exactly. It's meant to subconsciously just be peppered in there. But when we connect the dots and say, this is really bad, they go, oh, you crazy man. There's no world government. I mean, what you just said, the way you crystallized it, that is exactly it. They are targeting the unconscious mass.
Yeah, and the thing is that when you are in a situation, the word you've just mentioned, and there may be some background noise, if you're concentrating on what you're doing, you might not hear it. And then suddenly someone will say to you, hey, can you hear that background noise? And you stop and you listen. Oh, yeah. Now, from that moment on, you can't really concentrate, because all you can hear is background noise, because the conscious mind's been alerted to it, and thus now it's hearing you what he couldn't hear before. And this is what this information is doing. And in terms of Russia and China, this is again, very straightforward. I've just been talking about this Archontic force, which possesses people. This is the force that is, the Tristans called demons and all the rest of it, that is behind all this. And it doesn't just possess people in America, in the White House. It does it in the Kremlin. It does it in Downing Street. It does it in Westminster. It does it in the Chinese.
And again, even if you don't believe in God, the devil, spiritualism, the point is, if you look how the bankers are set up, they're playing all the countries off against each other while exempting themselves from their very rules. And that's why it's the globalists running China, Russia, and the U.S., and Iran, and Israel, running us all into each other, because the goal is hurt humanity, dumb people down, don't let children ever develop into their intelligence, hold humanity back. So even if it isn't physically real, it doesn't matter. Whatever this dark force is manifesting to destroy and hold back humanity.
All these people, Alex, running all these major countries of the world, most of the countries of the world, maybe even all of them, but certainly the vast majority, with maybe one or two exceptions, but these people, China, Russia, played off against America and Europe and NATO and the Cold War and what's going on now. They're all on the same team. This is what the penny needs to drop. And interestingly, you've just mentioned something else, the banking system. Well, one of the things that is a common theme of these Archon, Jinn, et cetera, is that they are parasites. They parasite off the energy and efforts and creative imagination.
The devil is never a maker.
No. So what have I just described? I've just described the banking system. The banking system creates nothing. It feeds off the creative imagination and energy of the population. Well,
here's an example. Just like you said, it's like YouTube. It doesn't create anything itself. You go make it. You go put your content on it, and then it acts like you've got a favor to even be there when it's totally parasitic.
Yes, and look at Facebook. It's demanding joint copyright of anything you post. That is the parasiting of human creative energy. Archontic. This is the key to understanding it all.
Wait, I'll go further. They're now saying they actually own it, some of them, and you don't have rights to.
It's classic. I mean, that's just another version of the banking system.
It's unbelievable, David. And again, I remember first reading one of your books like 18 years ago. I think it was your first book. And my cousin, Buckley Hammond, said, you got to read this. This guy knows what's going on. My cousin is just really, really intelligent. And I read it and I said, well, some of this is true, but this guy's a lunatic. And you know, I said a few things like that 17 years ago on the air, and I've apologized. Doesn't mean none of us are right about everything, but I know that you're really onto something. And because I'm hearing about all this occultism and all this stuff. I mean, when I snuck into Bohemian Grove 12 years ago, I was still so naive. I thought when Channel 4 paid me to sneak in because they were too scared to do it because I'd snuck into some military bases, so they thought, well, you'll sneak into this. And I thought it was all made up. I didn't think elites were really devil worshipping. Really, yeah. 12 years ago, David, I didn't even know that. So, you know, and then I've done research since then and found out whether it's real or not, every one of these stinking high-level elites believes they are communicating at Skull and Bones and everywhere else with fallen angels.
And that's another name that's given to them. Yes, absolutely. That's another of their many aliases.
But that's what I'm saying. Folks, on record, the elite, they really do believe in this. Whether it's real or not, you could say that from a psychological perspective, they are manifesting this idea in their mind, and then they're building it in the real world. But it doesn't matter either way. It's happening. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is real. It is true. And what they're doing, you see, we talk about the extreme rituals of Satanism, where they directly interact with these entities and they create energetic fields that allow these entities to slip through into our reality. I've talked to endless people around the world who've seen it. But in the secret society rituals, let's take the Freemasons. These rituals are not there just for a laugh. They're there because they create a certain energetic field that allows possession to take place more powerfully. Now, vast majority of people that enter the Freemasons and enter the secret society network at the lower levels have no clue, and they're not consciously part of this. They're not. They might use it for a bit of stuff in, you know, good business and stitching up something in the town or whatever, but they don't know the big picture. But the rituals, oh, do this and do that. Oh, no, it's just ancient rituals. We're just keeping the tradition going and all that stuff. No, the reason they're doing the same rituals now that they were doing thousands of years ago is because the rituals work in doing what the outcome is designed to be, which is to increase the possession of people. And the more people become possessed, especially if they're in politics and stuff like that, the more the occultic entities are dictating and dominating their behavior and decisions. And this is why you get people who may genuinely come into politics. You see it all over the world. I've seen it in England, who genuinely want to make a difference, and they come into it, and then you see them transform into everything and more that they came in, they said they wanted to come in to challenge, because the energy's got them. And this is what's happening. And this is why these people work as one unit. Pedophilia is about using the pedophile to draw off the life force of the prepubescent child, because these occultic entities want that energy more than anything else. That's why you find pedophilia absolutely rife, along with Satanism, in these elite bloodlines. It's all the same bottom line if you research it.
And now look how, I mean, you said a decade ago that Savelle was doing this from your BBC contacts as you worked there, and now it's all mainstream news, and he's best buddies, you know, with the royal family, and they're constantly finding dead bodies of kids and women on the royal estates, and it's just always swept under the rug. I mean, the royal family are practicing Satanists.
I mean, I don't, apart from knocking on Buckingham Palace and saying it face to face, I couldn't have said it more often in more places in this country. They are practicing Satanists. They are child killers.
Well, I mean, what does the Bible say? It says that the royalty of the earth, you know, I mean that the devil's going to give them the power, that's their minions. I mean,
see, this is it, Alex. Why are they royal families? They talk about the divine right to rule. What is the divine right to rule from their perspective? It is their genetics. It is DNA. That's why we have a woman who's the head of state and the real power, top of the power structure in this country, who is there only because of her bloodline. And the Eastern establishment families of the United States are the same bloodlines as are the European aristocracy and their richer and elite and corporate elite. They are the same bloodline. It's just that some wear a crown, and humanity reached a point where they weren't going to have that, or most of them weren't. So they moved from crowns and coronets into dark suits, and that's the only thing that's changed. But they're the same bloodline, and the reason they are called royal bloodlines is because of this hybrid bloodline, which makes them different to the rest of the population genetically, and thus, if you look through ancient accounts of these people, whether it's the the emperors of China or whatever, they talk about they are special because they are descended and are genetically connected to what they perceive as the gods. It's not the divine as most people perceive divine. No, quite demonstrably, it is their gods that they worship, this archontic force. That's where they say that they are connected to, and that's why they say they have the right to rule.
Let's take a few calls here. I'm skipping this network break, and then we're going to come back after David leaves us and cover nothing but news. Let's talk to TJ calling in from Minnesota, listening on WWCR Shortwave. Go ahead, TJ.
Alex Emery and David Icke, by God, I thought my Christmas was smashed to pieces when my Beagle Hound died on 10 December. But now I get to talk to David Icke. And if there was ever a man of 2 or 3 centuries, his name just happens to be David Icke in my humble...
Well, you're on the air with him right now. You're on with Von Helsing right now. Go ahead.
I've only got one of your videos, David. It's the one, your Oxford dissertation.
Right.
How does David Icke explain flesh and blood over illusion and what is illusory? Because illusion is illusory. And I think you do believe in flesh and blood. We got 3 Englishmen talking here right now. We got a Jones. I'm not going to give you my last name. And I... Okay.
Well, let him answer that question, brother. Sorry about your dog. Dogs are certainly sweet, good little creatures. David, comment on that.
Well, on my website is the full event from the Wembley Arena just a few weeks ago. And in the first 2.5 hours of what is a 10.5-hour, 11-hour event, I explain all this stuff in great detail about the nature of reality, because to understand that is then to understand the world. What we live in is not a flesh and blood reality. It appears to be. It's a holographic reality. It's an illusory reality. And this is not just me saying this. If you look at quantum physics, and I'll give you another quick example. I've been saying for a long time now, amazing as it may seem, that actually we living in the equivalent of a virtual reality computer program, and that we are being fed artificial information into the decoding sectors of the mind, the brain, and we are decoding this fake reality. Now, all these years later, a science team at the University of Bonn in Germany has come out and said, we think this is what it is. And they are building a version of the universe to prove it. And what they say that actually when you look at the laws of physics that we believe in, it actually makes sense from those laws of physics that actually we are in some kind of advanced computer program. And so the world is so not like we think it is. And it's so important that while we deal, yes, with the 5 sense level of it, we need to do that. That's what we're interacting with all the time.
Sure, we got to jump to other calls. Great points. We got to...
From the bigger picture to fully understand it.
Well, I mean, just look at the planet. Third rock out from the sun, a tiny, thin atmosphere, about as thin as the skin of an apple, of oxygen that we can even breathe. I mean, we are already in the middle of a fantastic existence. And 7 billion people living on this globe are mainly getting their reality off of an artificial television that can twist and spin things. And if you look at the messages, it's so destructive, so much of it. And it is bent towards negativity and ugliness. And I've always seen it from the perspective to make us weak, because if we see beauty and love and honor, that has been shown to bring us into higher levels of just basic IQ, so that you're then aware of larger horizons. But as David
Two things very quickly, Alex. You know, one of the other things that they say about the Archons in these Gnostic writings, it's that they are about creating ugliness.
Yes.
And look at it. You're right.
You're right. Ugliness everywhere. Let's go to Let's go to Scott in Florida, wants to ask David Icke about Satan worship. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, I've actually been on hold for a little bit, so I kind of changed the subject of my question.
Right.
David Icke, I'm a huge fan. I've read your book since I was 16 years old. I'm 22 now. So let me just make these quick points, and I'll take my answers off the air. One,
Okay.
What advice exactly would you suggest to the average, not the average person, because I know we're not average people, but what advice would you suggest to, just for lack of a better term, the average person to kind of let his peers or whatever remember exactly where humanity comes from and get that and reach that point of reconnected awareness with the true self? Because we all know love does not abandon. And another thing is the fact that what can we do to become, active? For instance, Facebook. I mean, I want to move beyond Facebook, but I've created a Facebook page, which I don't want to say the name, but it reaches about almost
All right,
a million
sir.
people.
Well, that's fantastic. Can you tell us your question for David? I just asked for quick questions.
Pretty much, what advice would you suggest to the average person to reconnect humanity with their awareness? And also, I just wanted to know if you were familiar with the products of you actually suffered with rheumatoid arthritis a couple of years ago, and I know a lot of people like Joel Wallach and Ben.
Yeah, a lot of that can be mineral or vitamin deficiencies. Yeah, I should send David some of that. David, in there, what's the easiest way to snap somebody out of their trance?
Well, it depends on the person, really. I mean, all you can do is put information in front of people in the simplest way, non-aggressively, not trying to convince them, just another version of reality to look at, and then they make of it what they will. It's as simple as that. But from a personal point of view, the key for me is to stop having your point of self-identity as your name, your job, your life history. That's your experience, right? That's your experience for a 70 years and 10 or whatever it is, within a tiny frequency band called visible light. That is not you. That's your experience. You are infinite awareness having that experience. When you move I know this from personal and the experience of many other people. When you move your point of observation of self from I am, Fred Jones to I am infinite awareness having an experience as Fred Jones, you then become in this world in terms of your interacting with it, physically, for want of a word, but you're not of this world in terms of the point of observation.
Well, exactly, but to give people
everything changes then, Alex. Everything changes. Everything shifts.
But to give people something simple... Sure, David.
Your sense of personal power absolutely explodes when you do that.
Well, and that's the big horizon, just on a basic level. A lot of times when you tell somebody or give somebody some info, they're not going to wake up on the spot. It's like David said, where the dam doesn't even have cracks yet, but it's going to collapse. You've just got to try to wake folks up and move on and not even worry about so much the pre-programming you get back. That's just because they're victimized. They've been programmed. Don't let that get to you. Don't receive that information. Give them your info like they're a patient and move on to the next person. Jay in Florida has a David Icke 2012 question. Got to move quick, brother. Go ahead.
Hi. I think that last thing, as time moves on, more and more people are going to really wake up anyway, because of all the things that are really happening. It's really coming out in the open. But really, for David Icke, do you think that this 2012 thing, I see it so much on TV, this 2012 thing, it's so in our faces. They want us to think that the world is ending, or either that, or they want.
And you notice they're doing it in concert with the Sandy Hook thing, which has been made a global hysteria. It's the idea, the end of your children being safe. Only government will keep them safe. It's all coordinated. Go ahead, David.
Well, yeah, very quickly on the Sandy Hook thing. This is a quick aside, but I think it's an important one. Satanism is actually Saturnism. One of the key things they do is they worship the planet. Actually, it's a dwarf sun called Saturn. And in ancient Rome, they in the period running up to what we call Christmas, they had Saturnalia, which was the worship of their god Saturn, just as the Greeks worship the god Saturn as the god Kronos. And it's in this symbolically obsessed, subconscious manipulation obsessed arena that these people work in. It's absolutely no accident that yesterday NASA released a grotesquely dark image of Saturn, saying it was to celebrate the holiday of 2012, which is what, to them, it's the Saturnalia holiday of 2012. And of course, this period we're moving into, Alex, now, and we're actually moving now towards Christmas, is one of the great Satanism.
Of course it is. David Icke, amazing. Up with David Icke, then going back to the news on, well, what we predicted coming true. They're announcing that they want to physically confiscate the firearms and pay you back for them. And the NRA is not even really making a big deal out of that. We're in a lot of trouble. But it has to get... They're not going to have roadside proctology exams and let you still have guns. I mean, you know, so many freedoms are already completely gone. They've got to get rid of the rest. And but David, you were finishing up your point. Yes, I saw.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it'd be nice just quickly, given the subjects we've been talking about, if I made a few very, very quick connections regarding Christmas and one or two other things, that just to show how deep this goes. And all these things are there to program the subconscious without us realizing it. First of all, the god of Saturn in ancient Greece was called Kronos. Kronos is for the word from which we eventually get crown in terms of royalty. The Kronos was depicted as an old man with a long white beard holding a scythe and holding the sands of time, because he was also the Greek god of time. This is why the Kronos, the Saturn god of Greece, is what we call Old Father Time, who's an old man with a long white beard holding a scythe. And the other expression of this is the Grim Reaper, which is the Saturn is the planet, I would say the sun of death, the Grim Reaper holding the scythe. And so you have the long white beard. And so you go to Santa Claus with the long white beard. You go to the way God is depicted with a long white beard sitting on a cloud, or version. And then you go to the Matrix, and you go to the person who created the Matrix, who was known in the Matrix as the architect, who had a white beard. And the Freemasons call their god the Grand Architect, and the Gnostics called what they call the Demiurge, the leader, their version of Satan, the devil, the leader of the Archons, they called him the Grand or Great Architect. It's all connected and talking to our subconscious all the time. But the point is this, very important. Once you bring this knowledge to the conscious mind, to the awareness of the conscious mind, it loses its impact. This is why when you show someone a subliminals are, every time they see that advert from that point on, the subliminals they couldn't see are the first things they see, because the conscious mind's been made aware of them. And that's what we're doing with this information. I hope you have a great holiday, Alex, and it's been great talking to you.
Well, I know this. They've certainly taken and laid counterfeits over the entire Bible, and we know that the December 25th is not the date of Christ's birth, any of that. And we know the church steeples are a phallic symbol, all of it. And there we are teaching our children that Santa Claus is real. They arrested a man last month in Canada who was out telling children that, and their parents, that Santa Claus wasn't real. And it just shows that we are all the myths that the media and the government push and counterfeits, twisted counterfeits, to cover up the truth. David Icke, thank you so much for the time. Great interview, and look forward to speaking to you in the new year and talking about your new book when it comes out.
Okay, mate. Thanks very much. Have a good one.
You too. There goes David Icke. Powerful interview.
And now